I'd like to introduce Dr. Richard Zeile. He's running for State Board of Education. And welcome, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Zeile from Detroit. I've spent most of my career in schools in the city of Detroit, both the Lutheran schools of the Missouri Synod, private schools, as well as charter schools and public schools in the city of Detroit. And I want to thank you for helping to get me the nomination to the State Board of Education. I will now dress like a typical member of the State Board of Education. Now, why do I put this box on my head? Because historically our State Board of Education, dominated by Democrats for the last 12 years, has not been able to think outside the box. Let me explain some of the sides of the box that make up the box and constrict the thinking on our state board. The first side is more policies. The state board has had the philosophy, the more policies, the better. If people get upset about an issue like bullying, they throw a policy at it. If you read that policy on bullying, you'll find 8 pages worth of stuff that encumbers administrators with paperwork rather than empowering educators to deal with violence in the classroom. Let me say this: the more policies, the less likely any one of them is to be enforced. And that is certainly proved by the highly touted policy about bullying, because ever since that policy has been adopted, we have seen more instances of bullying in the news. That policy has not equipped educators in Michigan to deal more effectively with violence and intimidation. Another side of that box is dreaming. Now, it's good to dream and to have a vision. I've been to a couple of graduations where the theme song was, "I Believe I Can Fly." And that may be good for youngsters who are imagining the future, but do you really want someone like that in charge of your schools? Unfortunately, that has characterized our State Board of Education. Dreaming. There are budget shortfalls this past year, and our State Board of Education has instead been dreaming about how they could spend more money. They came together, well, they were supposed to get together in January to learn about school funding. Unfortunately, in January 2010, they didn't have a quorum, so they couldn't have that meeting. But when they finally did make recommendations in May of 2010, their assignment was to review school funding and give guidance as to how we could make do with less. Their recommendation was to raise taxes, spend more money, and institute universal preschool for Michigan. This is a pipe dream, and it's clearly shown in the one study that they based their recommendation on, written by a man who theorized that disadvantaged children would learn 30% more of what's taught in kindergarten if they had a year of preschool. He extrapolated from this that they would learn 30% more in first grade and 30% more in second grade, and all the way up to high school and college, and then they would make 30% more when they got out, got higher paying jobs in Michigan, would get all the money back in taxes. Well, that's utter foolishness. It's dreaming. My 4 children got excellent education in Michigan, and now they're paying taxes in 4 different states. So dreaming has been part of the problem on our State Board of Education. They need to come back down to earth and make recommendations that will help our school districts prioritize and live within our budget constraints. Another side of the box is the assumption that government schools are best. They have embraced the race to the top ideology with national standards, national money. They tax us and deficit spend so that they can have this money to dangle before us and get us to adopt a whole bunch of legislation, which is what we did in January without input from the State Board of Education because they didn't have a quorum at their January meeting. And the assumption is that the government knows best. And so their proposals to consolidate schools all over Michigan to save money. There was the cockamamie idea to spend money to encourage experienced teachers to retire and then replace them with new college grads. I congratulate those school districts that chose not to save money and instead hired experienced teachers to replace those who took the retirement incentive. I think that we should support every school in Michigan that effectively educates students, whether it's a home school or a traditional public school, a private school, or a charter school. We need to be about educational excellence wherever it can be found, rather than the article of faith that government schools are always best. There is excellent work being done in teaching children in small rural districts in Michigan, in many charter schools, in many private schools, and home schools. We need to acknowledge and encourage excellence wherever it may be found. And a fourth side of the box is the assumption that one size fits all. That's the late 20th century progressive vision, that one big state-run school system could be all things to all people. Unfortunately, that vision has failed. The big school districts, and one could argue the bigger the district, the more likely they have been to fail, has not worked. When my family was young, we found one big car could serve the whole family because we're all going in the same direction. But as my children matured, they each needed smaller cars so they could go in their different directions. I think that Michigan has matured. I don't believe that all of our children are going in the same direction educationally. We need a variety of educational delivery systems, of curricula, because not all Michigan children are going the same math, science, social studies, English direction. Some are pursuing the fine arts. Some are pursuing industrial arts. Some are pursuing foreign language studies. They are pursuing gifts that Michigan needs that aren't on the MEP test. So we need a diversity of educational delivery systems and of curricula. One size does not fit all. And have you noticed with the State Board of Education that one size, how come the one size is always big and expensive? These are four of the sides of the box that have constrained thinking on our State Board of Education. But with your help, this November, we're going to break through that box and introduce fresh thinking and new ideas in our State Board of Education. I'm Dr. Richard Zeile, and I want to carry those ideas forward. Thank you for this opportunity.
That's as good as it gets.
Well, thank you. You're